Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into it, tackling the body's essential engine for health maintenance, the gastrointestinal system.
That's right.
We're going deep into the structure, the function, basically pulling apart that chapter on the GI system to give you the absolute core concepts.
And the first thing you really got to grasp is that the GI tract, well, it's our main doorway to the outside world, in a way.
How do you mean?
Well, think about it. Food, fluids, they're technically still part of the external environment until they actually pass through that intestinal wall into your blood or lymph.
Okay, so that boundary function is key.
Paramount, really.
Which sets us up nicely. So our mission today is to map out the big four physiological jobs of this system. What are they? High level.
Okay, the four big ones. Motility, that's the movement. Secretion, getting the right fluids and enzymes out there. Digestion, breaking stuff down. And finally, absorption, actually pulling those nutrients into the body.
Got it. Motility, secretion, digestion, absorption. And it's not just the main tube doing all the work, is it?
No, definitely not. You've got your accessory players, salivary glands, the liver, the pancreas. They're crucial, providing essential juices.
And there's that other angle, too. The GI tract as, like, a hormone factory.
Exactly. It's increasingly seen as this massive endocrine organ. It's not just processing food. It's sending out signals, hormones, that regulate your whole body's energy balance.
Controlling appetite.
Yep. Telling you when you're hungry, when you're full, managing nutrient storage. It's a command center, really.
Okay, let's walk through the structure then. It's basically one long tube, right? From entry to exit.
Essentially, yes. A very sophisticated tube. We can break it down.
Where do we start?
Upper tract. Mouth, esophagus, stomach. That's for intake, starting digestion. The esophagus is mostly just a conduit, a passageway.
But those sphincters are important there.
Oh, absolutely critical.
Yeah.
The upper one stops you swallowing air. The lower one, the gastroesophageal sphincter, that keeps stomach acid from refluxing back up. It maintains pressure.
Then we move into the real engine room, the middle tract.
That's the small intestine. Duodenum, jejunum, ileum. This is where the heavy lifting happens. Most digestion, most absorption.
Because that's where bile and pancreatic stuff comes in.
Precisely. That's the meeting point for all those digestive juices.
And then the final stretch.
The lower segment. Cecum, colon, rectum. Think of this mainly as storage, water absorption, getting the waste ready for elimination.
Okay. But there's a clinical distinction we need to make, right? About where upper and lower GI are, especially for bleeding.
Yes, good point. Anatomically, we might divide it one way, but clinically, for GI blades, the landmark is the duodenojejunal junction, sometimes called the ligament of Treitz.
So bleeding above that is upper GI bleed.
Correct.
Yeah.
And below it is lower GI bleed. It's a really key distinction in practice.
Got it. Now, you said it's a tube.
Yeah.
And below the top part of the esophagus, it has this consistent structure, right? 4 layers.
That's right. A remarkably uniform design throughout much of its length. 4 concentric layers.
Let's peel them back. Innermost layer first.
That's the mucosal layer. It's the real interface. Does protection,
Yep.
secretes mucus and enzymes, absorbs nutrients, and it's a major immune barrier.
It heals fast.
Amazingly fast.
Yeah.
The epithelial cells turn over completely, roughly every 5 days. Incredible self-repair capacity.
Wow. Okay, layer 2. What's under the mucosa?
The submucosal layer, think of it as the support structure, connective tissue packed with blood vessels, nerves, and glands making digestive enzymes.
Then the muscle.
Yep, the muscularis externa. 2 layers here. Inner circular muscle, outer longitudinal muscle. These guys are responsible for all the movement, the motility.
And the final outer wrapping.
The serosal layer, or visceral peritoneum. It's continuous with the lining of the abdominal cavity, and this is where you find that structure, the greater omentum.
Ah, the omentum. Tell us about that.
It's fascinating. It's this fatty, apron-like fold of peritoneum. It cushions things, insulates. But clinically, its big trick is mobility.
It moves.
Yeah, it can actually move to areas of infection or inflammation and form adhesions, like walling off the problem. It contains infections, stops them spreading, like the abdomen's emergency response team.
That's a great image. Okay, let's shift to motility. How does this smooth muscle tube manage such coordinated movement? Mixing, moving things along. Who sets the pace?
Well, there are 2 basic types of movement. You've got rhythmic movements. These are the intermittent contractions for mixing and propelling food. Think esophagus, stomach, small intestine.
Okay. And the other type?
Conic movements. These are about sustained contraction, constant tone, like in the sphincters, keeping them closed, or in the upper part of the stomach to help hold food.
But where does the rhythm itself come from? Is there an internal clock?
There is. The gut has its own pacemakers.
Yeah.
They're specialized cells called the interstitial cells of Cajal.
Cajal cells.
Yep. They generate these spontaneous electrical rhythms called slow waves. The frequency varies, maybe 3 per minute in the stomach, up to 12 per minute in the duodenum. They set the maximum potential rhythm for contraction in that area.
So they set the beat. But something else controls the volume, the intensity, the nervous system.
Exactly. It's a two-part nervous control. First, you have the local system, the enteric nervous system, or ENS. It's entirely within the gut wall.
The gut brain.
Kind of, yeah. It has two main networks, or plexuses. The mesenteric plexus, think M for muscle, controls motility along the length of the gut. And the submucosal plexus handles the local stuff, secretions, absorption, blood flow, right there in that segment.
Okay, that's the local control. What about the bigger picture, the ANS?
Right, the autonomic nervous system provides oversight. The parasympathetic system, mainly via the vagus nerve, generally speeds things up. It increases motility, makes those slow waves stronger.
It's the rest and digest system.
Exactly. And the sympathetic system, that's your fight or flight. It generally slows things down, decreases motility, tightens sphincters, makes the gut less responsive overall, puts the brakes on digestion when you need energy elsewhere.
Let's put this into practice. Swallowing, for instance. Seems simple, but it's complex.
Incredibly coordinated. You have the voluntary part in your mouth, then the involuntary pharyngeal phase, and finally the esophageal phase with peristalsis pushing food down.
And the brainstem runs that show.
Yes, the swallowing center there coordinates it all. And this is clinically vital because if that coordination fails, maybe due to stroke, neurological disease, you lose airway protection.
Which leads to...
Aspiration pneumonia, a major risk.
Okay, moving down to the stomach. It churns food into chyme. How's that movement controlled, especially emptying into the small intestine?
Peristaltic contractions mix the food, and the pyloric sphincter acts like a gatekeeper, controlling how fast the chyme enters the duodenum.
What if that gate malfunctions?
Problems arise. If emptying is too slow, you get gastric retention. Could be a blockage like pyloric stenosis, or maybe the muscle's just not working well, like in diabetic gastroparesis, a type of neuropathy.
And too fast.
That leads to dumping syndrome. Basically, highly concentrated chyme floods the small intestine too quickly, pulling water in, causing cramping, diarrhea, even systemic symptoms like dizziness.
Right. And in the small intestine itself, it's not just about moving forward, it's also about mixing, isn't it?
Absolutely. You have segmentation waves. These are localized contractions that slosh the chyme back and forth. It maximizes contact with the lining for absorption. Then you have the peristaltic movements, which are more propulsive, pushing things along towards the large intestine.
Okay, let's switch to that endocrine function we mentioned, the hormones. This feels like a whole other layer of control.
It really is. Let's hit some key players. From the stomach, you've got gastrin, its main job. Stimulate gastric acid secretion.
And the famous hunger hormone.
That's ghrelin. Also from the stomach, mostly. It signals your brain to initiate eating. Also stimulates growth hormone, interestingly.
Then food hits the small intestine and the signals change.
Right. Acidic chyme entering the duodenum triggers secretin. Secretin tells the stomach to ease up on the acid and, crucially, tells the pancreas to release bicarbonate to neutralize that acid.
Protecting the duodenum.
Exactly. And then there's cholecystokinin, or CCK, released in response to fats and proteins.
What does CCK do?
Two main things. Stimulates the pancreas to release digestive enzymes and tells the gallbladder to contract and release bile for fat digestion. Plus, it's a powerful satiety signal, tells your brain you're getting full, helps control meal size.
And the ones getting a lot of attention now, the incretins.
Ah, yes. GLP-1 and GIP. These are incretin hormones. They're released from the intestine after you eat carbs or fats, and they boost insulin release from the pancreas.
But only when needed, right?
That's the key. They enhance insulin secretion in a glucose-dependent manner, so only when blood sugar is actually rising. This greatly reduces the risk of hypoglycemia, which is why there's such a focus for diabetes therapies.
Fascinating. Let's zoom in on the stomach's acid production itself. The parietal cells make acid, but also something else.
Yes, two critical things. Hydrochloric acid, HCl, for digestion and killing microbes, and intrinsic factor. You absolutely need intrinsic factor to absorb vitamin B12 later down in the ileum. No intrinsic factor, no B12 absorption.
Okay, the acid. How does a cell pump out something so corrosive without dissolving itself? What's the mechanism?
It uses a specific transporter,
Yeah.
the H plus K plus ATPase. We call it the proton pump.
Like the drug target.
Exactly like the drug target. Inside the parietal cell, an enzyme combines CO2 and water to make carbonic acid, which splits into hydrogen ions, H+, and bicarbonate ions, HCO3. The proton pump actively boots the H plus out into the stomach lumen, swapping it for potassium, K plus.
And the bicarbonate, where does that go?
It gets transported out of the cell into the bloodstream. This temporary increase in blood bicarbonate is why you sometimes see a slight rise in blood pH after a meal, the so-called alkaline tide.
That makes so much sense why proton pump inhibitors, PPIs like omeprazole, are so effective. They block that final step of pumping the acid out.
Precisely. They irreversibly block the pump. And the stomach needs that strong mucosal barrier to protect itself from that acid.
What damages that barrier?
Things like aspirin, other NSAIDs, the bacterium H. pylori. When the barrier breaks down, those H plus ions leak back into the tissue.
And cause damage.
Yes, they accumulate, disrupt cell function, reduce blood flow, causing local ischemia, and can lead to ulceration and necrosis.
And NSAIs have that double whammy effect, right? They don't just irritate, they weaken the defenses.
Exactly. They inhibit prostaglandin synthesis, and prostaglandins are vital for maintaining the mucus layer and blood flow that protect the stomach lining. So they weaken the wall itself.
All right, let's follow the nutrients. Digestion breaks things down, absorption moves them across that barrier. The small intestine is designed for absorption, you said.
Absolutely. Its superpower is surface area, all those circular folds, and then the millions of tiny finger-like projections called villi. It adds up to a huge area, maybe 250 square meters.
Like a tennis court.
Something like that. And each villus isn't just lining. It has its own blood supply, and arterial and venule, and very importantly, a central lymphatic vessel called a lacteal.
Let's take carbs. They need to be simple sugars to be absorbed.
Monosaccharides, yes. Amylase in saliva and from the pancreas starts breaking down starch. But the final step, breaking down disaccharides like lactose or sucrose, happens right at the surface. Enzymes embedded in the cell membrane, the brush border enzymes, do that job.
And if you're missing an enzyme, like lactase,
Then the lactose can't be broken down or absorbed. It stays in the gut lumen, pulls water in by osmosis.
and causes diarrhea.
Osmotic diarrhea, a direct link between the mechanism, lack of enzyme, and the symptom.
Now, I remember the sources mentioning oral rehydration solutions, ORS. Why is having both sodium and glucose in them so important?
Great connection. It comes down to the main transporter for glucose and galactose, the sodium-glucose cotransporter 1, or the GLT1.
Co-transporter means they travel together.
Exactly. Think of SGLT1 as needing both sodium and glucose to work. It uses the energy gradient from sodium wanting to get into the cell, maintained by the Na plus K plus pump elsewhere, to pull glucose in with the sodium. So by providing both in ORS, you maximize the uptake of both, and water follows passively. It's a really efficient way to drive fluid absorption.
Brilliant. Okay, fats are different, though. They don't go straight into the blood.
Nope, they take the scenic route via the lymphatics. First, fat needs emulsification. Bile salts break large fat globules into smaller droplets. Then pancreatic lipase breaks down triglycerides.
Okay.
Then bile salts form tiny packages called micelles. These ferry the fatty acids and monoglycerides to the surface of the villi. Once inside the cell, they get reassembled into triglycerides and packaged into larger particles called chylomicrons.
And those go into the lymph.
Right. Chylomicrons are too big for blood capillaries, so they enter the lacteal, that lymphatic vessel in the villus. They travel through the lymph system before eventually reaching the bloodstream.
And if that process fails, you see fat in the stool.
Correct. That's steatorrhea. Fatty, often pale and foul-smelling stools. A sign of fat malabsorption.
And quickly, proteins.
Starts with pepsin in the stomach, then pancreatic enzymes like trypsin take over the small intestine. They're secreted as inactive forms, proenzymes, then activated. Final breakdown to amino acids happens via brush border enzymes again. And like glucose, amino acid absorption is mostly linked to sodium transport.
Okay, one last major area. The immune system. You mentioned the GI tract is a huge interface with the outside. It must need serious defenses.
It does. It's arguably the largest immune organ in the body, just based on surface area about 32 square meters exposed to potential pathogens. The main organized defense is the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, or GALT.
What does GL include?
Things like Peyer's patches. These are prominent lymphoid follicles, especially in these ileum, packed mainly with B cells ready to make antibodies, particularly IgA for the mucus.
And there are special cells that sample things from the gut.
Yes. The microfold cells, or M cells, they sit in the epithelium right over the Peyer's patches. They actively sample antigens, bits of bacteria, proteins from the gut lumen via endocytosis.
And do what with them?
They transport them across the cell and present them directly to underlying immune cells, like dendritic cells and lymphocytes. It's like active surveillance, jump-starting an immune response if needed.
Very cool. We also have P cells in there too, right?
Oh yes, lots of T cells, especially specialized intraepithelial lymphocytes that can react very quickly to threats.
And we can't forget the bacteria already living there, the gut flora.
Absolutely essential. The intestinal flora, or microbiota. Trillions of bacteria, mostly anaerobes, living in symbiosis with us.
What do they do for us?
A lot. They ferment dietary fiber we can't digest, producing useful short-chain fatty acids. They synthesize some vitamins, like vitamin K, and crucially, they provide colonization resistance.
Meaning they stop bad bugs moving in.
Exactly. They occupy the space, use the nutrients, and produce substances that inhibit pathogens. They're protective.
Which explains why broad-spectrum antibiotics can cause problems.
Precisely. Wiping out the good guys can allow opportunistic pathogens like Clostridium difficile or C. diff to take over and cause significant disease, like pseudomembranous colitis. It's a delicate balance.
Okay, amazing overview. Let's just quickly recap the big takeaways from this deep dive.
We covered the map, upper, middle, lower tract, the 4 layers, that clinical landmark, the ligament of Treitz.
We looked at motility, driven by the pacemaker Cajal cells, modulated by the ENS and the ANS.
We hit the key hormones, castrin, ghrelin, secretin, CCK, and those important incretins, GLP-1 and GIP.
We detailed absorption, the crucial role of SGLT1 for carbs needing sodium and glucose, and the whole bile-micelle chylomicron pathway for fats going into the lacteals.
And finally, the immune defenses, CALTs, Peyer's patches, the sampling M cells, and the protective gut flora.
Right. So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. The source mentioned that those mucosal cells lining the gut regenerate every 5 days or so. That rapid turnover is great for healing, right? But think about this. Why is damage to the GI tract lining, like ulcers and mucositis, such a common and often debilitating side effect of chemotherapy?
It connects right back to that rapid turnover. Chemotherapy targets rapidly dividing cells. That's how it fights cancer. But the gut lining is also full of rapidly dividing cells for its normal regeneration.
So the treatment attacks the healthy gut lining too.
Exactly. The very feature that makes the gut resilient in health, its rapid cell division, makes it vulnerable to that specific type of therapy. It's a trade-off inherent in the biology.
A really powerful connection to think about. A perfect place to wrap up. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the GI system's structure and function.
Pleasure to be here.
And thank you from the Last Minute Lecture, too.